Hello everyone, welcome back to the next session of SAP Security. In this session we will be discussing about composite role. First of all, composite role is nothing but it's a collection of single role. For example, this sales representative, Kelly is a sales representative. Then she can have a single role called sales order and purchase requisition. As we discussed before, that each business process that we can create as a single role, then we can combine this single role together and we can create a job role. The job role is the same thing what we are referring as a composite role. So then the next example is Chin is a sales manager, so we create a composite role for Chin which where Chin can approve the purchase requisition as well as the sales order. He can create the sales order. Since he is a sales manager, he can also create the sales order. Then the purchase manager role, where you have the sales order display, but because they don't create anyway sales orders, but they create the purchase orders. They will create the purchase requisition. Mark will convert the purchase requisition to purchase order. So this is a composite role. So composite role is nothing but number of single roles. And remember one thing, you cannot create a composite role for composite roles. So it should be single roles. One thing we need to remember here, the SAP system does not use different name for single role and composite role. When you are creating or naming your roles, you should consider the naming concept that will differentiate the single role as well as composite role. So this is very important because you cannot identify in the system. So we need to design a concept. Our authorization concept should accommodate the naming convention, whereas we can differentiate single role and composite roles. Next, let's look into the role menu, composite role menu. We know how does the single role menu is created. When you assign the single role to an user, that specific which is defined in the single role will be available for user when they log in. So what happens in the composite role? For example, which is given here, that we have a single role 1 which has a menu called purchase, and you have a single role 2 which has a menu called service, and we have a single role 3 which has a menu called sales. So if you create a composite role with these 3 single role, the menu of the composite role will be the combination of all, which will have purchase, service and sales. So when you assign this composite role to the user, they will have a menu of all these 3. This is very important, that when you design your authorization concept, we need to consider the menus of each role. Let's say if you do not duplicate, if you use the same standard of naming convention, then you will have an advantage of having this menu in a proper control. Meaning, when you create a purchase, when you have a single role which has a purchase as well as a sub menu under this purchase, and the single role 2 will have also purchase and a different sub menu under this purchase, then everything will be combined together here. This is a very interesting part in SAP role menu. So you need to define, while we are defining the naming convention for our roles, we also need to define the menus for the role. What kind of menu we are going to use and what should be the sub menus for each role. Then we can use the same menus and sub menus so that the user will have a single menu, they can follow it very easily. Let's check in our system, then it will be very easy to understand. So let's create a role. First, what we will do is we will create a single role. Security. In our naming concept, let's assume that we defined single role should be named as SR. Then say, then we will define the module purchase requisition. So this is our role some name number, also we give 01. So this is a single role, belongs to module purchase requisition. So we create a single role like this. Then SAP, let's give some description. SAP security training purchase requisition role. Okay, we can give some long description. Let's, for this, we just use the same long description here. Then let's go to the menu. Say you want to save, yes, of course. The menu, we will create a folder, for example. This belong to purchase. Under this folder, let's create some subfolder. Let's say, let's say create a subfolder called requisition. Requisition. So inside the subfolder, we will add some transaction. Our transaction was ME51N, then ME52N, ME53N. ME51 is to create requisition, change requisition, and display requisition. Now we assign this transaction codes to this menu under this folder. Here, if you see the transaction code ME51N, that means in the older version we used to have this transaction code as ME51. N means it's a new. Then in ECC we have new, but the ME51 is still valid. Yes. Since you deal with security, you need to understand the difference. Let's say if you go here, type ME51. Okay, this brings you to the create purchase requisition screen. This is the old menu. Now if you type ME51N, in ME51N this screen looks far better. You have a lot of selection criteria to select this specific field. So ME51 means it's a older version of ME51N. So this, since as a security consultant, it is quite important that you know this information. Okay, now let's go back to our role. So we added this requisition. Now let's go to authorization. Go to authorization now. Change author. Then let's go to change authorization data. Click here. Say yes. Here you can define the purchase group, purchase organization and plant. For time being I will say full authorization. Then we have some field which is yellow here. Let's see, purchase document. Let's assume I don't know what is this purchase document. Then I will select this one and press F1. Then this gives you the detail of the purchase document type as well as how we can use this. The idea behind this is that you does not need to remember each and every object, and practically it is not possible. What we need to be clear about is how to find this information. So let's, in this case I don't know what is purchase document type. Now I understood, okay, this is what the purchase document type means. Okay, now in my case, okay, I can assign star here. So I will click here. So I will assign all the purchase document type. I can create, change and modify. Then this is fine. See, save, okay, and generate. Now I created one role for purchase requisition. Let me create one more role, one more single role for purchase order. So I want to create one more single role for purchase order. Say, click again, create single role, security training, purchase order role. Here we describe some long text. Say this is the role to create purchase order. This role was created reference to SAP security training. So we have a long text. Now let's go to menu and define a menu. Okay, I want to save this and create a menu. I will create the menu same like before. I will create the menu under purchase. I will create a menu under purchase. So under purchase I will create a subfolder called order. So under this subfolder I will assign all the transaction code which is related to purchase order maintenance, that is ME21N, ME22N, ME23N. So create purchase order, change purchase order and display purchase order, then we assign. Now these transaction codes are assigned. Now let's go to the next tab, authorization tab. Go to change authorization data. So of course I want to save, say full authorization. Okay, so all the relevant authorization objects are assigned for this transaction code. Only one which has a yellow, say okay. I will say star for this object and field, which is fine. Say okay and generate. Now I created two single roles. One is purchase order, another one is purchase requisition. So let me save this role somewhere. Purchase order, another one is purchase requisition. And one more tip, that if you wanted to save something, please use notepad. The interesting part in notepad is when you select some of this technical data, that you can see whether there is any space or not. That is a very interesting part in notepad. So I always use notepad to keep this kind of information. Now we created a purchase order and purchase requisition, two different roles. Now what happens if one user wants this role? So we will assign both of these roles to this user. So let's create a user. Security purchase TST01 test 1. Say subsecurity test user 01. I'll leave all other things blank. I will go to the put this one. Now I will go to roles. We will copy these roles and assign to this user. So right now we are assigning two different single roles to this user. Now I log in by this user. So as soon as I log into the user, I can see the user menu. User menu right now I have only one purchase. Under this I have order and requisition. So it automatically found that there is a duplication of this parent menu, which is purchase, and which has an sub menu of order as well as the requisition. It automatically assigned based on the sub menu under this purchase. So that is what is very important, that we need to define a proper naming convention for this menu. Let's assume if I did not have this purchase menu in the same format as we defined, then it should have been a complication. Now let's see how to create a composite role. For that we will go to PFCG again. Let's create a composite role. Our composite role we identify as CR, composite role. First one is SR means single role, CR is composite role. Then we say purchase GR, purchase manager. Okay, let's say composite role, SAP security training, purchase manager. Some long text. Okay, then in the composite role, next tab is roles. Say you wanted to save, yes, of course. Next tab is roles. Here we can specify the single roles which you wanted to assign to this composite role, and we can also specify whether it's active or not active. So if you wanted to just keep it is inactive, but just want for reference you want to keep in the same role, that also still possible. Okay, for time being we will keep it active. Then next tab is menu. Here what we can do is we can import the menu with this option from the single role what we have assigned in the roles menu. For time being I don't import this menu. Okay, let me save it like this. I don't import anything, I don't do anything. Now I will go to this user. This is my composite role name. I will go and keep it saved. Let me go to the user /n su01. This is my user. This also I will save it. Change. Let me go to the role. Let me remove these roles. I will assign only this composite role. So when you assign the composite role, it in turn assign the single roles. Okay, save. Let me log in using this user. Let me log in using this user. Then we have the same user menu as well as the authorization. So the use of the composite role, so instead of assigning each single role to the user, you can group all the single role together and create a composite role specific for your job function and assign to the user in one assignment. Okay, now let's see how does the import role menu option works in composite role. Let's go to PFCG. Right now we did not import any roles. It is in the same way the single role is assigned to the user. Okay, go here. Let's say import menu. So when you click the imported role, it imported the role menu from the respective single role. You can modify these roles. Yeah. Right now the role text is something like this. Let's not change it now. I will save it like this. I will go to the user. Let's say /n. Refresh the buffer. /n means refresh the buffer. Refresh the user buffer. This menu. Okay. Now we have a role menu which is slightly different. So you have role name and the purchase. Under purchase you have a sub menu called order. Then you have it like this. So in this case what you can do is you can modify this as you require. Let's say this is your role name. You wanted to change this one. This is called purchase order. Okay, save. Purchase requisition. Save. Now if I go to my user, and you can see purchase order and purchase requisition, but still these menus are still in the different roles, different nodes. So okay, after some time you use this role, you created this role, you are using it for some time, and you updated some menus in the single role. So that is not going to be imported into the composite role automatically. Please note this one, that whenever you change any menu in your single role, that is not going to be imported into your composite role automatically. However, if you change any authorization object, any technical object, it will affect in the composite role immediately. The reason is that composite role does not carry any authorization objects or any technical values. It's a collection of data. So the profiles which you are going to assign during the composite role assignment is the profile of the single role. So it does not make any much changes when you are changing any authorization data. It will immediately reflect in your composite role. But for menu, it will not immediately reflect if you are using the menu from composite role. If you are using the menu from the single role, then it's not a problem. It will be reflected immediately. But if you are using it from composite role, then you need to re-import this menu. For that, you need to use the import menu again. This will re-import the menu. Okay. Right now we do not have any changes in the single role. Let's do some changes. Then it will be quite easy to understand. Let me go to one of the single role. The purchase order role, you may also need to have a purchase requisition display. Let's go here, and I will create a new submenu called P request. P underscore request. This is a submenu. So under this P underscore request, I will assign a transaction code. I will assign the transaction code ME 53N, display purchase requisition. Okay. As soon as you assign this transaction code, as we seen that it will assign the respective authorization object to the profile. We need to go to this authorization tab, then select authorization data. You want to save? Yes. So what is added? So we have some new authorization object is getting added. These are all the old object, these are all new object. These are all standard. Yeah, we did not change anything. So here we have only one which is yellow, which I wanted to change it. So I changed. Now you can see the status changed to maintained. That means it was delivered blank and we maintain. So this, you got the clear idea about this text. So right now we maintain this object, that's the reason it's saying maintained. Let's say if I say delete here, now this is changed. Changed means the default value did not had this 06. We change from the default value. So it's changed. Maintains mean this is changed. Maintains means that we maintain a value which was blank. Okay, say save and generate, come back. Okay, we did something. Now let's go back to the, if you go back to the user, let's say this is our user /n, refresh the user buffer, purchase requisition, sorry, purchase order, purchase requisition. There is nothing about the new menu. The new menu which we have created is not reflected here. So if you use the composite role menu import option, then every time whenever you change any menu in the respective single role which is assigned to the composite role, then you need to maintain it again. So let's go back to the composite role and go to the menu, import again, say re-import. You say re-import, it's imported again. Yeah, in this case we still need to, it re-imported everything, so the vault menu whatever you had, it's all gone. So let me put some text. This is purchase requisition menu. This is, oops, this is purchase requisition menu. This is purchase order menu. Okay, now we have modified this menu, all the necessary, the sub menu is already imported. Now let's go to the user and check. Refresh /n, purchase order menu, you have all the sub menu which was created. So if you use the composite role menu, then it is very important that you maintain this menu every time. But in a practical scenario, what we do is we actually do not use composite role menu because it's very easy to manage in the single role itself. As you see in our previous scenario, it automatically manages when you are assigning it, so you don't need to worry about so much, because in a long run one composite role will have more than 40-50 single roles, so it will be very difficult for you to keep track of what was changed in each single role and how to manage this menu. So in a practical scenario, if you have a well defined menu policy in each single role, then keep it with the single role. But if you wanted to merge this menu and you want to manipulate this one, then the composite role menu will be a better choice. Same like user change data, we also have the change data for each role. If you go to utilities and say display changes, if you select here and say click execute, then it will give you the detail of each changes. So the purchase manager role, the attribute was changed like this, then it was creation and deletion of roles, and some role description was changed. Single role in composite role, that we added some single role in the composite role, then we assigned to some user using SU01, then we did something with the role menu. So we also have change document for each roles. So create and delete roles. If you see here, we can see there's a new role is added and it says the value is unknown. Okay, this is again typical problem what we face in our day-to-day basis, that some of the values are not very well defined in the change log. That is the reason I said whenever you do any changes in the role, please document. You can document in the long text, so that will be quite easy to understand what was changed and why it was changed. So we have quite a lot of selection criteria. We can search the data based on this. Maybe we can check one of our single role, then you will understand it more better. Let's go to the composite role, take one of our single role here. Let's go to utility and display changes. Now we wanted to change, we want to see authorization data, what all the authorization data which was changed. Say I want to see all authorization data, then say, now you can see each and every object of this particular role and how this was been added. It's all a new value, but what was the value inside was not known, not recorded properly. That's the reason other tools like GRC and other stuff comes into picture, but the normal scenario we generally document this somewhere, or as I said, it's the best way to document is in the long text. If you do not have a very well defined documentation system or documentation policy. So the composite role is nothing but it is a combination of single role. In a general scenario, what we will do, we will also create one single role for all users. This single role will contain authorization like SU53 or print spool or check background job, this kind of transaction code, this kind of authorization which is given to all users. So in a general scenario, in a typical scenario, that you wanted to give some of the authorization to all users. For that we will create a single role, a general single role, and assign to all users. So I have an example here which I can show you. CA general. CA means cross application. What it has, let's go to menu and see what all the authorization this role have. You have SO21 maintain PC work directory, SM37 to view the background jobs, and shortcut menu, search menu, and SAP Office SU3 and SU53, and SAP Business Workplace. So these are all the common transaction which everybody, let's assume all the user requires. Then we will create a role, single role for this purpose, and we will assign this single role to every composite role. In that case what happens is, so the common transaction code is assigned to all users, but there will be one problem, that if you assign two different composite role to one single role, then the duplication of roles is going to be increased. This also happens, this is again we can define it as one of the disadvantage in composite role. If you have couple of single roles which is assigned to different composite roles, and if you combine one of these two composite roles, then you can have duplication of single roles. So that's again a disadvantage. So if you go to authorization data of this role, then you can see all the relevant authorization data. Something is still yellow here. Batch administrator. Okay, this batch administrator we will not allow. We will not allow all the user to be a batch administrator. So I don't know what is the value here. Let's say I'll select here and say F1. Unfortunately there is no documents available, so since I know, we can go to SU24 and see the documentation. So this is used in SM37, so I do not want this to be provided. Here the input is whether it is yes or no. If you specify yes, then they will allow this user to be an administrator for background jobs. You can specify it's no here, then you are not allowed to administrate any background job. This is wait. The next example that we have, same object, batch job again, but there is something which is blank, so I don't need this. For example, I will say deactivate and delete it. I don't need this. Batch name, so basically I don't do any batch administration. I don't, this should be assigned only for the basis consultant, so just delete it. Here again duplication of an authorization object, let's say delete. We have some more here. This is authorization checks for user. This object is required for your SU53, so we just put the role name is star, then you can display all the role names. So whenever you run an SU53, it needs to read the user buffer and bring the role name. So if you want to read the role name, then you need to have this authorization object. Here again authorization names in user master, I will put it as star and star, so it's fine. ABAP workbench. Okay, here it comes very critical. Now we are creating a role for general user. Now we gives you a standard option that activity 01, 02, 03 and delete and execution for s_developer. It's a very critical authorization. This s_developer is a very critical authorization. This is for ABAP workbench. This is a general authorization object in ABAP workbench. So whenever the ABAP consultant required to create any programs or function modules, this is the object, this is authorization which they want. So it is very critical authorization. So right now we are designing a common role which needs to be assigned to all the users. So we need to now use our analytical power to come to a conclusion that okay, this is a common role which will never require an authorization of creating and changing of any programs. So what I will do, I will simply select this and you can keep it deactivated or delete it. If you delete it, as I said, if you keep it deactivated, it's quite easy because it's coming from the menu. If you delete it, then you need to consider that you have deleted something. You need to reconcile whenever you are removing any transaction code from this menu. So activity 03, okay, maybe you want to allow the authorization type is this for the specific authorization type. So I will allow all user to view their workbench, that means view the program. This also not required in a typical scenario because end user never requires to view the program. Again, this is again a security breach that we assign only to the consultant in productive system s_developer 03. Authorization for document sets, anyway this is not required. We see again if you see, these are all coming from the standard. We already have star here in the additional authorization object. So this field does not make any sense because you already have star. This will be overwritten by this one. So we can simply delete this. The advantage of deleting these objects which is not required from this role, that you can reduce this size of user buffer. So whenever you are checking something in your user buffer, you need to check less number of objects. That is one of the advantage of reducing this authorization object from these roles. As well as we discussed, one role can have multiple profile. The reason of creating multiple profile is because the number of objects in a single role will grow quite big. Then the SAP cannot handle it in one profile, then it will create additional profile. So in this case also we don't need this one. Let's delete this. Then we have one more. This again duplicated. Let's say I don't need this, I will delete. Okay, so now everything looks green. We are good to go. So this is an example of an general role which can be assigned to all users. So let me go back to our purchase manager and assign this role. Okay, then I go to my user /n. User, put /n. This is still in the Volt menu concept. So we have added something to the composite role, but it is still not effective. The reason is because we are using the import menu option. So we need to re-import again. Re-import again. Now we need to change it again. Common T code. Purchase order. This one I'll say purchase requisition. So whenever we change anything in this composite role, we need to re-import this menu. Now if I go and say /n, now we got all the transaction code. So best in the practical scenario, what I will say or what I feel comfortable is to stay with the single role, not to make this composite role import or merge, because that can create little complications when you are dealing with quite a large number of roles. Okay, let's go back to our presentation. Okay, with this we are coming to the end of this session. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you in the next session. Bye bye.